Welcome back to the Autoblog Podcast. I'm Greg Migliore. We have an awesome show for you. This is podcast 810, over 800 of these podcasts. So we're going to lead off with what would you drive in 1995? It was a fun listicle we did earlier last month, end of last month, and check it out. If you're from the 90s, if you remember the 90s, if you're sort of, of a certain age, I think a lot of these cars are going to resonate with you. We'll dive into some news. Big news in the last week or so about the Tesla Cybertruck, the end of the line for the Jeep Renegade, and it's the beginning of the story for the Fiat 500e in America, as well as some other EV news, specifically out of Honda. We'll talk about what we've been driving, including the Toyota BZ4X, man, that's a mouthful, the Kia EV9, and the Audi SQ5. So with that, I will bring in what I believe is a fellow geriatric millennial that is senior editor for all things electric and green, John Snyder. What's up, dude?
How's it going? Yes, like 1995 is just when I was, getting ready to get my license. And so yeah, that 1995 post sort of rings true. Yeah, geriatric millennial. True.
Yeah, I think we're technically classified, without giving away too much personal information, as millennials by the census or whoever does it. I saw a thing that it goes farther back than you'd think. It's like literally like 78 or 79 for a birth year. And then it goes all the way forward, farther than you would expect. It's a fairly big generation, if you will. But then culturally, it seems like, people sort of in their late 30s to early 40s definitely are more like Gen X,
Yeah,
So
I've seen the argument that if you have, if you're in this sort of between stage and you have an older sibling that's, definitely Gen X, then you are considered Gen X as well. I don't really fully identify with either. I have the best of both worlds.
Yeah. You know what we are? We're sort of like the silent generation. That's that group after, like before the baby boomers, but after the greatest generation. We're like that group of people that was born in like the late 30s, early 40s. And most of the time people either think they're boomers or they're, the greatest generation. They don't realize like, oh, you were born in like 1939 or something, So.
Yeah. Well, I know my way around a computer and an electric typewriter. I'll just say that.
I learned to type on a typewriter, but I will say this, we've both worked for AOL and now Yahoo. So I think that really is a lot of different punch cards when it comes to this stuff. So
for sure.
Yeah, man. In 1995, I technically did not have my license, but I was kind of right on the precipice of it. And this list is pretty cool. I think the staff had a lot of fun pulling it together. So yeah, I mean, obviously, if you're listening to this on the podcast, you got to check it out. I think it'll resonate with a lot of you guys as well. What did you go with?
I went with the Toyota MR2.
Yeah, it's a good choice.
It's the second gen of the MR2 here, and I was looking at some of the other ones. My first car was a '94 Blazer, and I believe they switched that to the more rounded body style for '95. Which I don't know. And that Blazer was a hand-me-down from my Gen X sister, so thanks, Liz. And the Subaru SVX was outside the price range. I did like Jeremy's Yukon pick because that is a lot like my S10 Blazer that I had. Mine was a 4-door. But yeah, I don't know. MR2 is one that I always, whenever I see one, I get pumped. Just really neat, sort of budget mid-engine car, and that price point, the $24,000, which is the inflation-adjusted equivalent of today's average new car price. That is just enough to get the manual transmission with the fixed roof. So that's what I would get anyway. I don't need to be able to take the tops off. I don't like the sun. I'm not a convertible guy. So yeah, it was perfect. But there's a lot of like really fun choices from that year, but go ahead and talk about yours.
No, just listeners, so the whole premise here was to give sort of like Back to the Future, I guess not 1980s, but like car buying advice of what we would have driven in the 90s using, again, the inflation adjusted, pricing. Some of this is probably realistic, some of it isn't. I don't know at my current stage of life if I would have driven a 95 Impala SS. I'd like to think I would have, but that's what I picked. And it came in right in that price range. I was actually a little surprised. I think it's a then and now. I frankly wouldn't mind owning one of these now. You get that big Corvette V8 engine. They really, I think, dressed up the cop car, taxi car, Caprice, made it something kind of cool. I loved what they did with the wheels, the paint colors, some of the police package, options that made it more of like a muscle sedan. This car really resonated with me. And the starting price was $22,910, according to this amazing document that you keep sharing about pricing whenever we do one of these lists. So that's what I would have done, and that was my pick. This and a lot of cars are starting to go up in price. It's really become like a sort of a fairly modern yet technically classic vintage collectible. So, I mean, I would have.
It's such a Greg Migliore car to pick, too. Like,
I know.
You've got your type for sure.
Yeah, I like this car. It's I have a neighbor who's doing something with a Caprice, and he seems to be kind of making it into an Impala. Hey, that's cool. I have another neighbor, other end of the street, that has an MR2. I think it's yellow, and every now and then I'll see that coming out of the garage. And I'm like, oh, okay, you should drive that more. Another guy actually at the end of the street has a 240. What are the old Nissans?
Oh, nice.
Yeah, I just saw the taillights peeking out the other day when I was walking the dog. So, yeah, it's, I don't know, a lot of good things on here. I won't read everything, but, Zach Palmer went with the 95 Integra GSR. That was a cool car. Mm-hmm. Greg Reza did drive the 95 Nissan Maxima, which that to me actually kind of really, that car I think sort of put the Maxima really on the map in the United States. It was, you've got the MR2 in here. Associate editor Byron Hurd went with the 95 Volkswagen Passat GLX, the really awesome advertisement. And Jeremy's Yukon GT two-door, which I think that's one, I don't know, that's another one that really kind of resonated with me. I remember riding around in like friends, parents, Suburbans, and Yukons. And I think that's actually a part of the business right now that you could, maybe somebody like Scout will do this, is make like a larger body on frame SUV, but make it two doors. If you look at like Jeeps and like the Broncos, they're smaller vehicles, relatively speaking. They're not small, but like, you get a two-door Jeep, it's still smaller than, sort of like the attitude or the feeling of like what a two-door Yukon would have been. Even though I haven't looked at the dimensions, cars from the 90s are way smaller than cars now, but it's the idea of a large SUV with two doors.
My Blazer, I had the four-door, but it was big enough for me to sleep in it comfortably.
Wow.
I camped in it constantly.
90s were fun for you.
Oh man, yeah. Yeah, right. Getting my license, and this list, there's a lot of good stuff on there. There's, you can get a Cherokee.
Yeah.
You can get basically any Cherokee. The Grand Cherokees are ruled out. Those start at about 25. There was there's some really good stuff. The Oldsmobile Silhouette. I remember.
Oh man,
gosh, I never wanted one. I always was just sort of fascinated with it.
Well, there is a very John Snyder car. The Oldsmobile Silhouette.
Yeah, and maybe now today as a parent of two, with a dog, that would be better than an MR2 for me.
It was more interesting than like what was the Chevy one was, I think, the Lumina, right? They randomly put the car and made it a van variant. And then there was a Pontiac one as well. Yeah, man. GM was
And
really
then
into the minivans for a minute.
and then Eagle was
Mhm.
still around then. My sister's first car before the Blazer was an Eagle Talon.
Yeah.
But those are all well under the price cut there.
I actually had a 93 Lumina 4-door. It was the
Oh,
Euro
nice.
sedan. It looks like by 95, it would have cost about 17-ish. So, there's that. I mean, honestly, I was really struggling between the Chevy Impala and the Cherokee because I love those XJs.
Yeah.
Those are two cars, three if I include the Grand Cherokee, that I would legitimately love to drive right now and just have in the garage. So I don't know. We'll see.
I had an XJ a few years after this. It was awesome. A little bit less comfortable to sleep in than the Blazer.
Okay.
Just slightly like shorter cargo area. But I've got a neighbor that has like 5 or 6 XJs out in front of and behind their house at any given time in all different colors, 4-door, 2-door. I've always wanted to, I hope I run into him at the Village Green sometime so I can ask them about it because it's neat. They're like collecting them. I don't know what they're doing with them.
That was your chance that could be your chance to get into one of those, I mean, it seems like when you look around, you can still get into an XJ if like you're on the hunt for it, if you will, because I feel like that's really going to get expensive. Like they're either going to be like in junkyards or they're going to be on like Haggerty or Cars and Bids, and there's not going to be a lot of in between.
Yeah, you're probably right. Although I do see some like pretty well-worn ones on the road in Michigan. Some of them lifted, but those are people that are probably, constantly fixing them up just to keep them running, using them as an off-road toy.
Yeah, looking just at the Pontiac lineup here, you could get a Grand Am 2-door for about 13, and then the Grand Am GT was about 15. My brother had a 95. I think he had a Grand Prix. He had a 2-door Grand Prix, which was 17, which kind of surprises me that the Pontiac Grand Prix was that much back then. Like relatively speaking, gosh, that car was such a piece. Like it always was in the shop, and by the point he acquired it, it was 6-7 years old, which was pretty old for a Pontiac back then, But yeah,
you can just get into a Saab 900 for this price too.
Yeah.
1995. 90s cars, I think they're finally like sort of getting their due a little bit because I don't know, maybe it's just nostalgia, rose-colored glasses, but
yeah, that's true.
There's some fun cars.
Yeah,
fun to think about.
That's true. All right, I was just listening to the Wallflowers. That was another band around that time that was pretty popular. The Counting Crows. I mean, Green Day was a huge deal back then. Yeah, man, it was a different time. So, all right, well, check out the list. We hope you, as you're listening at home, you've had a good time going down memory lane with some of these cars. Get in the comments. Let us know what you think. What did you drive in 1995? What's a car maybe from that time period that kind of hits with you? It's podcast at Autoblog.com. So send us a note too if you want to do it that way. That'd be cool. And also, hey, any spend your monies, we can do that as well. So let's check out the Cybertruck news. That was the big reveal. I say that sort of with air quotes of last week. There's a lot to unpack there. It was essentially like some customers finally got some deliveries. There was a big event. Elon Musk sort of emceed it. Some theatrics. We got some pricing and other details. And, we really started to get at least something substantive about the Cybertruck after 5 years of kind of, white noise or, no noise for that matter on this truck. So, it was polarizing. Let's put it that way.
Oh, for sure.
What were your initial impressions?
I thought the actual production units I saw, when they had the cameras on them,
Mhm.
they looked really good. They looked really, really clean. A lot better than the late prototypes and their sketchy build
Yeah.
quality, that we'd been seeing on the roads for that. So that was good to see. As production ramps up, and changes and all sorts of things, you never know. The production quality could be kind of all over the place, but I was definitely pleased with what I saw with that regard, at least with these initial units. Some interesting things that you can get a range extender, which is actually just another battery pack that sort of installs into the bed. It takes up some of the bed space, but gives you a lot more range. There's three different trims basically that Musk announced, that Tesla announced.
Yeah.
Musk didn't really talk about the details of the car much at the presentation, but they published on their site. There's a rear wheel drive model that's not coming till 2025, and that will be the cheaper one, starting at about 61,000.
Mm-hmm.
And that'll do 250 miles of range estimated. Tesla says 6.5 seconds 0 to 60, so pretty quick, and can tow 7,500 pounds. Next up is the all-wheel drive dual motor version, 79,990. That comes next year. 11,000 pounds towing, 4.1 seconds 0 to 60, 600 horsepower. Tesla says 350 miles of range. And then there's the Cyber Beast, which is also coming next year.
Yeah, that's kind of cool.
Close to 100 grand, 99,990, but 845 horsepower, 0 to 60 in 2.6 seconds, and 320 miles of range. Also towing 11,000 pounds. So those are really impressive specs for that one. I imagine a lot of the performance videos that Tesla was showing off, drag racing a 911 while towing a 911, that sort of thing. They were probably using Cyber Beast for that sort of stuff. But the rear wheel drive model, 60 grand. 250 miles is decent. But yeah, I mean, that's not terrible pricing. I mean, I know it's a lot more than Tesla originally said, but there's no way Tesla's going to actually sell one around 40,000 to begin with. I don't know that anyone ever believed that. And then with inflation over the past 4 years, the pricing seems not too crazy to me. That's just me, but I know it does sort of put it out of budget for a lot of people who thought they were going to be able to get one for 40, 50 grand. So that's a bummer in that regard. Still really weird looking car. Really weird looking truck.
Yeah.
I'm not wholly convinced about the utility of it. Just the shape of it, and the rear window seems, just the angles of it in general just make it seem pretty impractical in a lot of ways. But if it lives up to these specs, I mean, some of the stuff is stupid though, like bulletproof doors.
What do you need that for, right?
Yeah,
like
it's so silly. That sort of stuff. There's just the way the car was presented as this, like, futuristic post-apocalyptic thing is just, I don't know. It is what it is. I'm interested to see, how successful the Cybertruck actually is. And I know there were a lot of reservations, $100 refundable reservations for it.
Did you put one down?
I did not know.
Okay.
No, I'm rarely an early adopter of anything.
Yeah.
I want to wait till something's been in production for a year so they can work the kinks out before I get it. But I don't know. If I was looking for a pickup around 60,000, I don't know. I'd consider it. You have access to Tesla's charging infrastructure.
It's a big deal.
Yeah, which is great. I mean, granted, with the deals with the other automakers, you'll have that anyway soon. But and I don't. It looks weird, but I kind of like weird looking, sort of ugly cars. But I don't know. What did you think of it?
Yeah. So my opinions are kind of all over the place, and I've been really interested to just kind of listen to like just the public tenor surrounding the Cybertruck, which has changed so much. I think that's sort of reflected the change of the tone around Tesla. Largely based on a lot of the ways Elon Musk has been acting, basically. Because I feel like when this thing first launched, there was skepticism, but there was also a fair amount of like maybe cheerleading, by some of our automotive colleagues. Now I feel like most of that is dissipated. I mean, honestly, at the end of the day, I probably shouldn't even care. It's really like, what do I think? And I mean, I was putting all that other stuff aside, just looking at the vehicle itself. I was a little surprised that the build quality seemed a little surprised. It seemed, I think, are the key words there. Seemed better than it was. I guess common sense would say we didn't really expect it to be as bad as some of these like viral videos and pictures we were seeing. Like, did anybody really think they were going to make a final product that was as crappy as that vinyl thing that Franz von Holzhausen took to Cars and Coffee in Southern California? I guess I didn't really think they'd roll something like that out. So that appeared to be better. Pricing's about what I thought. The original numbers they talked about, I mean, I don't think that was even going to hold true even then, let alone 5 years later with inflation and global pandemic and all the things that impacted car prices. From an appearance standpoint, I kind of like what it is. I like interesting design. I think, I don't have to buy it. It's like as a car enthusiast, I can kind of like a wedge shaped thing and then just move on with my life. If you like it that much, go buy it. If you don't, cool. Get into the comments. Either way, it's a free country. Do whatever you want. And I think, I tend to like it when car makers take risks in design. Otherwise, you just have like, I don't know, the midsize SUV segment where everything looks like an Explorer, Right. So why not take a risk? Stainless steel, I think they made this about as hard on themselves as they probably could have by doing that. They could have got this thing out without doing that. You look at DeLorean, what other significant examples in automotive history can you think of where they did this, right?
Right.
It's pretty few and far between. But clearly they wanted to make this like a desirable object, not just a truck, not even just like a luxury item. They wanted it to be almost like a cultural touchstone. I don't think they necessarily have achieved that, nor are they going to, because I think, frankly, I think a lot of people at this point are sort of also turned off by Tesla. It's flipped a little bit from where it was 5 years ago, where like, Tesla was on the vanguard of EVs, and they're still the largest EV maker in the United States, which is significant. but I think there's been blowback from, a lot of different, corners towards, Elon Musk in particular. Now, I don't know if that's enough to stop people from buying his products or not. I don't know, because a lot of people still use Twitter, even if they don't like him. It's a tool that they need in their life. So all that's to say that I feel like, the honeymoon for a lot of his products where you would just roll them out and everybody would love them, like a lot of people would, is definitely over. And there was a poll this morning or yesterday about how 2/3 of Americans wouldn't even buy a Cybertruck. I don't know if I necessarily put myself in that camp, because I think all cars are interesting, and, there's, a lot of things at play. But it did seem to get a much more cynical reaction than I almost would have maybe expected back in 17 or 18 or whenever they first showed this thing.
Yeah.
So I'm a little all over the place. Like, I mean, wedge-shaped design, stainless steel, sign me up. Electric, cool. Is it really a truck? Not really. It's like an El Camino or a crossover is what it really is, because it's enclosed, which I don't know. Frankly, that kind of works better for me. If I were to buy a pickup, I'd probably get a mid-sized truck with a tonneau cover on it. So that doesn't necessarily dissuade me. Pricing, whatever. You throw the intangibles about Tesla and Musk. So, I mean, man, there's a lot to unpack. There's a lot of baggage.
Yeah, I'm interested to see how the whole stainless steel thing shakes out. I mean, it's an interesting material. I mean, you're going to be, less successful, like, almost invulnerable to rust. And but what does that mean for repairs if it does get shot up, and you have to fix the dents in it, or, it's going to be a little more difficult and expensive to repair, I think. And, I don't know much about, the cost of manufacturing, but I'll be interested to see, how that affects, Tesla's bottom line. I mean, you don't stamp it, right?
Yeah.
It's, you sort of cut it and, weld it together, which is interesting. I don't know if that's going to be, more cost effective than, the traditional production, but I'm curious to see. Musk said it's going to be a while before they start making money on these, which is not surprising, for that's how Tesla does its business. It loses money on, and that's how generally EVs work. You lose money until you start to make money. But I'll be interested to see how that all shakes out, and how, if it works out for Tesla, is anyone else going to follow suit? Will we see another stainless steel car? I doubt it.
I'm reading this thing from Wisconsin Metal Tech. I don't know who the hell these guys are, but they have a kind of a random, it's almost like a white paper, an article on just the very short history of stainless steel cars. It's like the DeLorean. Sounds like Ford did something in the 30s. Let's see, Ford did something in 1960s with two Thunderbirds, which was actually a pretty cool Thunderbird, that generation of Thunderbird. Looks like there was a late 50s Cadillac, 70s Cadillac, and then, I don't know, it diverges into talking about cars with gold plating. So I would assume stainless steel and gold plating, the use cases are about the same.
Well, if you could, give the cars sort of a different finish, but keep it that metallic finish, like, oh, that'd be cool. Like a gold, like, maybe not necessarily plate something in gold, but give it give the steel a metal, a golden finish. That would be awesome.
I mean, now at this point, we're talking more about flatware than we are like, drivable machinery. So, I mean, I think this is going to be one of the more interesting, like, just stories of the car business in the next, say, like 2 years. Like, are they going to be able to scale up? is there an appetite for this vehicle? My guess is probably yes. I mean, they have over 1 million, I think, hand raisers. I'm not sure if everybody's put those deposits down or not, which is basically like 4 years of production, like at the high end, if they're churning out 250,000 a year. Can they do that? Are these things going to be the biggest disaster since, like, the Edsel or the DeLorean or something? Like, I mean, I just feel like when they build these in mass, we're going to be writing stories about just crashes, electrical problems, fires, dents, rusted out ones. Other they stainless steel, it doesn't rust. But I just feel like we're going to be getting, or maybe it'll go the other way. It's just going to be like, like I said, it's, there's a lot of baggage with Tesla, with Musk, with Twitter/X. But just looking at it purely from a product perspective, like, I can't remember another product that was this hyped, this anticipated, and had this many variables. You know, like the Ford F-150 Lightning doesn't have this many variables. Like, we know the body's going to work. We're not worried about the body panels. We're not worried about Ford not being able to make them because they've been making trucks since World War One. Tesla hasn't. They've done a lot of other things very successful, and there are things, like, to your point about the supercharger network, that are really in its favor that other companies don't have. So it's just going to be quite a show, man. Like, sometimes, what's the saying? You root for radio, you root for TV, you just root for the internet here. We'll see. Like, people seem to have no shortage of interest in it. So,
well, I mean, pretty much anything that happens with it, it's going to be uncharted territory. So it'll be interesting to watch. There's going to be a lot of news on it, regardless of whether it's good news or bad news, just because it's all new. It's all just new things to deal with.
All right. Well, check out our coverage. This is another one. We had the story. You wrote it. It was also, I believe, picked up by our friends over at Yahoo, which is a site we're affiliated with. Obviously, they own us. Site we're affiliated with. Jonathan Ramsey did a nice column, and James Riswick did a nice column too. So we kind of hit it a lot of different ways. So check that out. If you need you missed it, check it out. All right. So let's run through some other fairly quick news items at this point. The Jeep Renegade is done. It's the smallest Jeep. It was the least expensive. It's going to be done after this model year. It's interesting because, I don't know, it was a nice entry point for the Jeep brand. I think it had some charm. I remember when they launched it, it definitely was a bit of a departure from everything else Jeep did. We liked it. We did a compact crossover test a few years ago, and I believe it finished second. It was behind the Kia Soul, right? We like that one too. The segment's totally different. Yeah. So, I mean, it definitely had some supporters. You see them on the road.
I mean, they used to sell a ton of them.
Yeah.
When it launched, they were selling a lot of them, and then sales have dwindled recently. They haven't done anything to the car in a while.
Yeah.
So, I don't know. It's I want to see if Jeep comes up with a new entry vehicle, or if they just leave it as the Compass. Because I mean, so many cars so many entry level cars now are getting more and more expensive. The point of entry into almost any brand has gone up quite a bit. So when you see something like the Buick Envista or the Chevy Trax, and they end up actually being good, it's a breath of fresh air. So I wonder. I don't think Jeep needs to have a cheap car in its lineup. That's kind of not where the brand is going. They just seem to be moving up market with everything in general. But I wonder if they're leaving some sales on the table by not having that more affordable offering. They could have updated the Renegade and maybe seen sales climb again. I don't know.
we tend to get a little nostalgic when almost any car is killed,
Yeah.
like the Chevy Bolt and the Chevy Volt, and we'll talk about the Bolt here in a minute. But I don't know. It didn't sound like there was any real plan to really update this. And Jeep is going to get really like into hybrids, plug-in hybrids, and EVs in the next few years. So I think they just had to kind of trim the fat somewhere, and it wasn't really paying the rent for them. I think also, I will give credit where credit's due. They did bring a character into this either compact or subcompact crossover segment when it was really lacking. That was one of the things we did really like about this at the crossover test, which we did up north. But it was also like it wasn't really competitive. The powertrains were kind of meh. Interior was dated, and even the charms weren't like all that charming anymore. Didn't really feel like a Jeep all that much. It just barely felt like a Jeep. So when you got things like the Invista and the Chevy Trax, some of the things from Hyundai, Mazda, it's just like in this segment, you got to be good and you still have to be fairly inexpensive. And, Jeep is making a lot of good stuff, but Jeeps aren't really cheap either. So long, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah, I really liked it though. Like it was never a car I would have considered buying. But when we did that comparison test, I sort of fell in love with it. It it's sort of badge engineered and whatever, but it definitely did have enough Jeep feeling in it for me to feel like, oh, this cheap Jeep's a Jeep. It's got all-wheel drive, 4-wheel drive, and it actually sounded pretty good. It had that sort of boxy shape to it that felt good to be in. You could see around you really well, and try not to be nostalgic about a car that I never owned, but
All right.
But
Did you ever drive the Fiat 500e? I guess we'll transition to another small Stellantis product.
Right. No, not the electric one.
Yeah. So it's coming to the United States. We all thought we knew this. We all knew this. There's I think the kind of interesting thing here too is you could get a level 2 home charger, or public charger credits are included. So you get this small little electric Fiat, which some people I think are going to think this is a really cool little city car. I've never really loved the Fiat 500 for most of my uses because it's just too small, but it's definitely a cool design play. It's a European car. And I think honestly, it could be a really good city car. I think if they market it to the right sort of markets, this could work, so we'll see.
Yeah, it depends on also on how it drives, but like the Mini SE is really fun to drive. It feels like a Mini. If this thing feels sporty and nimble and all that, and it's got more range than the Mini SE.
It's true.
It could be attractive to people who don't need to drive more than, well, let's see, it says 149 miles of range. That's like a base Leaf, which there's a market for. Most people, at least in the US, want more range than that, but the city dwellers who would prefer a smaller car, it's easier to park and navigate narrow streets. 149 might be more than enough for them, especially if it's their second car. But
yeah, I think it could work if you live downtown, any urban center, Chicago, New York, Detroit, where streets are tight. You want something that's a little more nimble. Like, I think this could work. You want to go electric. A lot of times, infrastructure is all over the place. It really is, so it might be for the person who drives short distances, or like everyday short distances, or who, maybe drives like 2 to 4 times per week. I can see that, you know, like you don't have to charge it if you're just maybe, you know, trying to get across, you know, Chicago is a city that comes to mind because New York is all about, you know, taxis and mass transit. But I don't know. I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah, and if you're someone who like rides your bike to work every day during the summer and just don't
Yeah.
want to deal with that in the winter, not a bad choice.
Yeah. No, it's you know, it's definitely a situation where it's still a pretty small market, if you will. But you know, so it goes. I'm actually driving a Mazda 3 this week, which is bigger than a Fiat 500. And we'll talk about that on a future podcast. But one of the things I'm really enjoying is just being able to like kind of dart in and out of parking lots, traffic. Yeah. It's like parking at my kid's school. It's like, you know, a dock of large SUVs. And it's like I can shoot in between, you know, parking spaces, lanes, and get out of there, you know, and it's like go to any like grocery store. And again, it's like, you know, ocean liners of SUVs, you know, and it's kind of fun. Plus, it's a fun car to drive. So,
yeah, when I had the Mini SE, you know, a few weeks ago, that was like it's really able to work its way through traffic. You just almost feel like you're a ghost just slipping through everything.
yeah.
And yeah, navigating parking lots. It made running to the grocery store a lot quicker.
Yeah.
I could just easily park it anywhere. Even if someone was hanging over the line, I could still fit in that little parking space and get in and out real quick. And then, yeah, super zippy, fun having an electric powertrain and something that small. It just feels real peppy.
Yeah. Well, speaking of electrics, the Bolt is back. General Motors CEO Mary Barra sort of confirmed some specifics earlier this week at an event in Detroit. It's 2025 is the timeline. It's going to be Ultium powered. We mostly knew this, but she sort of articulated it at an event. This was actually an Automotive Press Association event. So shout out to that, of which I'm a member. I didn't make the event, but you know, her comments made the rounds. And I think I remember being at the event in Detroit at the auto show when she unveiled it, actually. This was probably 10 years ago, the original Bolt. And it was funny. People were like, did she say Bolt or Volt? Because the Volt was still a thing then too. Volt is gone. Bolt is back. And, you know, I think it was, you know, a smart move by, you know, General Motors to bring it back. You know, I think frankly, it was nice to almost reassuringly hear her lay out some details, because you know companies say a car is coming back and then you're like, well, okay, when is it coming back? And this was pretty specific. So I think it fills a gap. It gives, you know, people who are looking to get into the EV space accessible price point to do so.
Definitely, the Bolt is, you know, very attractive for that reason.
Yeah.
And because it offers good range and it has, you know, it was one of the longest range cars for a long time. So I mean, there's going to be changes and improvements to the new one to come out, but the current one is still like super attractive to me. I think, you know, it still has some lifespan in it, even though they're killing it off. Makes like I'm really tempted to get one, and you and I have talked about this offline. Like I've sort of been bugging my wife. We should get a Bolt. We should just get a Bolt for, you know, our second car. But she just doesn't like it. So she wants a Mach-E or something is more of her taste, which that's fine with me. I would not, you know, if she wants to. If she's going to say, let's not get a Bolt, let's get a Mach-E, I'll be like, well, it's more expensive, but I'm not going to complain all that much because, God, that's a great car. I would rather have the Mach-E.
Right. Yeah, I would. But that might be one you can, you know, lose the fight, if you will, and enjoy the Mach-E. I don't know.
But for a car that, you know, is not going to get driven a lot, you know.
Yeah.
Not nearly as much as Well, I don't know. Maybe if we had it, she would drive it more than the Palisade.
Yeah, that's a good point. That's a good point.
Uh, so
All right, it's a good move by GM, and then we'll close out the news section here. Just kind of a preview. CES, Honda is going to like show its entire like EV lineup. I assume there'll be some concepts mixed in here. It's part of their plans to go zero emissions, which I guess would be all electric by 2040, which is that's sort of the outer range of what we're seeing for companies. Like GM has said 2035. Other companies have said even sooner. Obviously, if they might have smaller lineups, but it's a goal. Let's put it that way, and they have it. And obviously, they're serious about it. If they're going to do, sort of preview here at CES, our associate editor Byron Hurd will be on that trip to CES, and I think he's going to be, covering Honda closely. So it's, I'm going to be intrigued by this. I think,
yeah,
they have the Prologue, which is Ultium based. They created that with General Motors, and then I believe the deal ended. They both went their separate ways, which is it's just kind of interesting considering they're both trying to scale up. But to me, this right now is the single biggest news looking ahead to CES in just over a month.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm really excited to see what Honda has. In the teaser, if you look at Byron's article on it, the image that Honda sort of teased us with is this sort of wedge-shaped car. You just see the nose of it and part of a wheel all clouded in shadows, but it's but it looks like something like it could be something pretty sporty, which that makes me excited. Honda's shown some really cool EV concepts in the past, like the Honda E and the sports EV that they showed back at is it Frankfurt or something? it was some of these. I remember seeing them on the floor at Frankfurt, but they had already been revealed. But hopefully what they show us here at CES is going to be things that we'll actually see in the American market too. But whatever this is that they're showing the front end of is intriguing for sure.
I hope they do show some sort of sports car or concept at CES. I think it's a good place to do it. There's a lot of vaporware at CES. And who knows how close that would be to production, but I hope they do it. More on that to come. CES is going to be a big show this year. So
yeah, it is, and it's turning into more and more of a car show every year too.
It really is. There was a little bit of ebb and flow there for a while, but what we're seeing is it's really stacking up to be a pretty big deal. So let's talk about our drive segment. We got 2 EVs and we've got a twin turbo V6. So you want to go first? Talk about the BZ4X, which is a mouthful.
Sure. I've been driving it the last few days, and I actually quite like it. I liked the Solterra a lot when I drove that, and it's basically the same car. But the Toyota feels a little bit more refined, a little bit. I think it looks a little sharper, a little more mature than the playfulness of the Subaru. But I've actually quite enjoyed driving it more than I thought I would. The interior is quite comfortable. The seats are excellent.
Okay.
Has these really supportive, well bolstered, well shaped seats that I just really, really like them. They just sort of fit me perfectly, and I'm curious to see what other people think of it who have sat in it, because it stood out to me immediately just how well shaped and supportive and comfortable they were. It's very smooth driving, as you would expect, and there's some weird things about it, like the steering column. It when you adjust the steering wheel, it tends to block out uh, the instrument panel, the digital instrument cluster, depending on how you sit. So that's something that bothered me too about the Solterra. But I found that even with the steering wheel blocking half the instrument panel, it doesn't really bother me. I don't really, after the 5 minutes of driving, I don't really notice it. And, maybe it's my brain just filling in the parts of the digits behind it, or I'm just shifting imperceptibly to see the rest of it. And yeah, this one's all-wheel drive. So interestingly, it's got Subaru's X mode. It's got an X mode button in it for dirt and sand and snow. So yeah, there's definitely some of those Subaru things hidden throughout it. And then it's got interesting materials. On the dash, there's sort of a fabric, which is interesting, and it feels a little bit nicer than I recall the dash material of the Solterra feeling. So yeah, the one problem with it is range. You can't get a lot of range in it, and when you get all-wheel drive, you start giving up some more range. So let's see. You can get the front-wheel drive version. You get 252 miles, which isn't bad. The all-wheel drive version that I have, it's the limited all-wheel drive. You get down to 222, and in the cold weather, that goes down quite a bit. I haven't kept it at a full charge. I've just been charging it here and there at home. So it hasn't been all the way charged, but even then, I haven't even seen it close to 200 miles of range in this cold weather. But I do like that they offer a front-wheel drive version of it. A lot of EVs are either rear-wheel drive or all-wheel drive. And there's no, for me, the front-wheel drive is a good in-between. It's a really good way to save money on a car, but also have it be usable in the winter. Especially around here, like I'm not too keen on driving rear-wheel drive in the winter unless it's a lightweight car with really good snow tires on it. And even then, probably gonna try and avoid driving as much as possible in the snow. But I'll drive front-wheel drive in the snow all the time, and I might choose the front-wheel drive over the all-wheel drive of the BZ4X, specifically because it's cheaper. It starts at $42,000.
Yeah.
And because you get more range, you get the full 252 miles of EPA rating. Whether you actually get that much range throughout the year remains to be seen. But yeah, this time of year is always interesting to test EVs because you just lose so much of that range to the weather.
Yeah, I remember that a little bit with that long-term Kia EV6. It just some of the range would disappear pretty quickly, and the charge times would be greatly lengthened. But I don't know. It's a cool-looking car. I think it's definitely, as Toyota kind of tweaks its lineup, it definitely offers something on the showroom floor for Toyota buyers interested in an EV.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, you might get someone who's been driving a Venza for a while and sees this and like, oh, it kind of looks like that. Similar body style, a little bit sharper looking. Almost looks like it has some Lexus styling to it. And then all electric, but Toyota, who's I'm already familiar with their electric motors and their hybrids have treated me well for years and years and years. I'm going to take the leap. I'm sticking with Toyota. Not a bad car at all.
Yeah, no, it's interesting. I think this could be the answer for EV buyers who treat I don't think with EVs being so different to so many people, I think it's still a leap, and you would still be almost like, early adopter isn't maybe exactly where we are, but still be somebody who's willing to take a technological leap as opposed to somebody like me who's like, can I get an iPhone SE for cheap because my phone's broken? Or like the way other people buy microwaves or toasters. But I do think this does offer like that assurance to somebody like, well, it's Toyota. I've had a Toyota. It's electric. It looks kind of cool. Like it could be that right gateway. So do I think it's going to be a huge game changer? I really don't. I don't think this is going to attract a lot of new buyers potentially to Toyota. But that does bring me to a car that I do think could be more of a game changer, which is the Kia EV9. I drove it yesterday. I had the EV9 GT line with all-wheel drive, as they say. It started at just under $74,000. So it was not cheap. It was actually a little more than I even expected. But for that kind of money, you're getting a 3-row electric SUV. If you want to go rear-wheel drive, you could get into it for about $55,000. So, there's a fairly, significant, delta of, from the lowest to the highest price points, depending on what you're looking to do here. Mine total horsepower was 379 horsepower and 516 pound-feet of torque. So it will move. You can tow up to 5,000 people. And yes, you can seat 6 or 7. And they're going to apparently build it in America in 2024, as I read the spec sheet here. I believe they're going to do that in, I want to say, West Point, Georgia. I'm not sure if I have that totally right. But yeah, they're going to do that. So that would enable some tax credits. It was an impressive vehicle. It really was. I know you're going to be driving it in about a month here out in California for a first drive too.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to driving it. I have spent some time with it, in a stationary setting. Just packed full of features. The ones I saw were definitely higher trim, but just packed full of content, as Kia and Hyundai tend to do. And yeah, like really sort of catering to those rear passengers, trying to make them comfortable and give them. There's lots of USB ports, and there was a drawer in the back of the center console for the second row passengers, and it had those second row seats with the leg rest and the recline, much in the way that the front seats in some Hyundais and Kias do, like the Hyundai Ioniq and Kia EV6 if you get that package. But yeah, really comfortable. They use a ton of recycled materials throughout too, which is really interesting. But yeah, curious to see how it drives. Again, one of those vehicles where I wish there was a front wheel drive version rather than rear wheel drive.
As an enthusiast, you're supposed to want that rear wheel drive. Come on.
I know, but especially like in a 3-wheel SUV, 3-row SUV, that sort of middle ground of practicality, save on price and range, but still be able to drive it confidently in the winter. Front wheel drive would be nice. But I don't know. I'm curious to drive it. I know the other Hyundais and Kias that I've driven, they're either rear wheel drive or all wheel drive. The all wheel drive ones do have that rear bias though, which is really, really fun. And their rear motor setup is what makes that possible. So it does make the rear wheel drive versions very fun to drive as well. So I can see myself enjoying that, but just, living with it in the winter, everything's, as the snow starts coming
winter's
down
coming
here.
And you're thinking, because I know you're very active in winter and you want to be able to do all the things you want to do. So you need all wheel drive and snow tires and, I agree. That's an interesting setup with, rear wheel drive, but, I think snow tires would probably be fine. It really reminds me of like a Ford Flex. Just that kind of barge, square box. It's a good sized vehicle, again, 3 rows. Car and Driver said they hit 4.5 seconds in the 0 to 60 race. So, I mean, I didn't really hammer it that hard, but I did give it some throttle, if you will, on Woodward. In fact, I drove it around yesterday morning. It was kind of a sunny, snowy morning, so it can move for sure. Steering reminds me a lot of like some other electric cars where that's maybe a little bit lighter at times, or certainly that regen kind of vibe. Yeah, I think it looks cool as hell, man. Just you look at those headlights, the kind of fender flares, just the roof line.
The wheels.
The wheels look sweet. Kia does a great job with their wheels. Yeah, a lot to like about it. It was a very quick loan. It's up for SUV of the year for the North American Car, Truck, and SUV of the Year awards. So whenever those come through like a fleet, they're very quick loans a lot of the time. And it definitely was a vehicle that left me wanting more. I'm sure you'll probably get a little more seat time with it. And I'll be definitely interested to hear what you think.
Yeah, I'm really curious to drive it, as someone who drives a Hyundai Palisade, seeing what Hyundai and Kia have to offer in a 3-row with electric. Maybe I'm shopping for my next car, 5 years down the line or something.
Yeah, it's definitely, there's not that many electric SUVs out there, especially ones this big. So it definitely, that alone to me fills a gap that like things like the BZ4X don't really do. It feels like there's a lot of compact crossovers that are electric right now. There's a lot of them in different forms and shapes and price points. But we talked about why we thought the Bolt was so compelling on the small side in the more entry level price point. To me, this is equally compelling on that other end of the spectrum. So
yeah, definitely.
All right.
Yeah, looking forward to driving it. And I was peppering you with questions about it yesterday.
Yeah, it's, like I said, I really enjoyed it. Oh, one thing I forgot to mention, but I should. Visibility was pretty good. You expect a 3-row SUV to be like, just a barge, but the A-pillars I thought were thinner than even some like smaller cars I've driven, recently. It was better visibility for a variety of reasons than the Toyota Prius, which has that very sharp roof line. The pillars are pretty thick and you're low to the ground. With this, you're upright, it's a box, and the pillars, at least for the segment, seemed relatively thin. Get inside a Tahoe, man, and you can miss entire blocks of a street. So yeah, I definitely like that. It was very drivable.
Cool.
Close things out with the Audi SQ. SQ5 Sportback, which was, I thought, a lot of fun. It's been a while since I've been in one. This one came in at $76,515, so about the cost of entry for a Audi crossover, if you will, in this segment. Mine had kind of like silver metallic paint with a magma red interior. The magma is an option, which is included on this sort of package, if you will, this trim. It had the TFSI V6, works with the 8-speed Tiptronic. So very straight out of central casting Audi, if you will. Mm-hmm. It looked like one. It had the beautiful LED lights. It had their LED lights inside. Seemed pretty quick, there was that. It was like sort of like a torquey experience, as you would expect the turbo to be. I don't think it's a bad deal. It's like it's such a known quantity. The one thing I would say is, you've probably driven a lot of Audis with virtual cockpit. This one, I remember when that was like Star Wars, just how forward looking that seemed. I got in there and I was kind of like, oh yeah, this is just like 10 years on what virtual cockpit looks like. It wasn't all that special. I didn't even like the infotainment system all that much. It was like the 10.1-inch screen I thought seemed small and a little dated. It was a little bit of a pain to toggle through different things. So, again, like true to form, again, straight out of central casting, but in some ways it felt a little boring compared to some of the BMW and Audi and Mercedes vehicles I've driven lately.
Yeah, I mean, I can
Don't
see
hate it,
that.
still like it, but
I can
yeah,
see that. It is a little bit more I don't know, buttoned up than those, I suppose. But in that way, it also feels more, I don't know, something mature about it.
yeah. Oh, for sure.
It's a little bit of a conservative take on the segment. Compared to BMW and Mercedes maybe, but I thought it was, I mean, really comfortable,
Yeah,
really sort of versatile
yeah,
on different types of roads. Um, I had one a couple years ago now for the first drive and during COVID. And,
mm,
um, I remember driving it. It just transitioned really nicely from um, like smooth, curving, winding roads to dirt roads.
yeah,
It just, took anything you could throw at it, any sort of road, potholes, uh, you know, the highway, it was just did well on everything. You couldn't really get it off its guard. Um, and yeah, so that says a lot about the suspension and the chassis
yeah.
in general. But yeah, I thought it was. I like the styling, especially the interior styling.
Hmm.
Very clean. Some just neat sort of architectural touches there. Um, yeah, the virtual cockpit it is funny how that's something that we've grown so used to now.
Hmm. Yeah,
But yeah, SQ5. Yeah, I think in the Q5 realm, my favorite is still the plug-in hybrid.
yeah.
It's just
I
really
see
really well
that.
balanced in terms of, it's sort of the Goldilocks of them. But yeah, SQ5 is pretty fun.
Yeah, it was very functional. We got like a wagon in the back, umbrellas. I put a fair amount of miles on it, and I really enjoyed that too. Like I like driving Audis. I like, people see the four rings on the hood, and it's like, oh, that's an Audi. That's nice,
Yeah.
and it's definitely like the exterior design, and the interior was pretty good. It had, again, the red leather seats, which were pretty comfortable. Lots of that. I don't think it's specifically Alcantara, but like crushed sort of, material that goes in the doors. There are some carbon inserts, so
Mhm.
pretty attractive in a traditional sense there. A lot of stuff that 5 years ago we would have been blown away by, and now we're kind of like, okay, par for the course. But
Yeah.
it, again, drove very well. Audis, I like their general dynamics, especially, they do a good job of making a car in this segment, a crossover in this segment, fairly fun to drive.
Yeah.
349 horsepower, I believe. So that's not nothing. And I think I like the word you used, that it's very, like, I think you said it was mature, right? And that's,
Mhm.
I think, compared to, like, say, a BMW X3 or an X3M, or like an Alfa Romeo, like a Stelvio, like particularly in quadrifoglio trim, or an AMG. Those are, again, also, I think, very mature vehicles, but they're a little more polarizing. The Audi is just more like, hey, this is what we do. This is what we've been doing. You don't like it, you want that grill over there, you could go talk to BMW, but we're going to give you a silver crossover with a powerful engine, good chassis design, and that's what we're going to do. So I can respect that.
Mhm.
Yeah. I think the kind of final point I thought was, like, for 78 grand, you get a lot of different things for that. Like, would I want to
Yeah.
maybe go Wrangler or Bronco? I don't know. Maybe something, get like an entry level body on frame, SUV or something. Like, for 78 grand, that's a fair amount of money. Is this how I would spend my money on it? I don't know. I really don't.
Yeah. Probably not.
Yeah.
There's just so much out there at
Yeah.
that price point. But for some people, for sure, they
Yeah.
want something that looks good and
Yeah.
is sort of conservative, but also sporty. Um, yeah.
All right. All right. It was pretty pretty lengthy show here. We are over an hour. I don't think we've hit it quite as long as we went a couple of weeks ago with, I think we had about 115. So we'll try to get under that. Do you have any winter drinking recommendations for everybody who's still listening here?
Let's see. And when I go outside a lot in the cold, I'm always doing something, checking on the chickens, playing with the kids, chopping up the giant branch that fell into my driveway to turn it into firewood. And what I want after that, you'd think, winter, you want like something dark and thick. But after one of those days recently, we went to Arbor Brewing Company and had their Euchre Pills. And man,
that's good. I've had that.
That just hit the spot.
Yeah, it's
just
a good beer.
A nice solid Pilsner. That was really good. But also, I did spend Saturday evening at Connor O'Neill's watching the Big Ten championship drinking Guinness.
Yeah, so there you go.
That was also good, but that wasn't as active of a day. So
I had a pint of Guinness at Connor O'Neill's myself a few weeks back, and I had some of their Irish stew. It was pretty good. It's a good bar.
I had the boxty, the pancakes.
Thought about that. Yeah, that was on the list. Yeah, okay. Well, I'll close things out. My recommendation, I think I've mentioned this before, usually in summer, but I found a blood orange honey beer from the Sheboygan Brewing Company in my basement fridge. I kind of was out of my like normal, just, hey, here's a sixer of Labatt Blue or something, just for whatever. So I was, really doing some diving to see what might be back there because I felt like a beer. And I had a 16-ounce pint of one. This is available all year round, which I don't think I knew that. I thought it was more of a summer thing. Drank it on the patio. It was about 30 degrees. Poured it into a pint glass. It was pretty cold, like I said, inside and out. And I think that's a thing I like to do in winter. Is like maybe you shovel snow, you walk the dog. You've already been outside for an hour. You're wearing a parka. Have a beer outside and just kind of soak in. Cool, clear night. And I really enjoy that beer. Really kind of reset the day.
That's a pretty good one. Sheboygan Brewing Company is right down the road, sort of from our cottage.
Yeah.
And so sometimes we'll go in there and get a growler filled. And usually that's the one we go to. I've tried a lot of their beers. But that one is pretty solid. It's sort of the one I go to from them.
Yeah, I think I'm going to make a beer run tonight. Not sure which direction I'm going to go. It's just sort of like a hockey beer, like a Labatt Blue, or maybe I'll try a sour or something. Go a little different. We'll see. Take a risk. We'll see. All right, and that's all.
Go wrong with the sour.
You can't go wrong with a sour. I tend to think of that as more of a fall beer, but fall or a spring beer, transitional. Yeah. But I don't know. That could be on the Beer Blog podcast coming up. We'll say.
Sounds good.
All right, podcast@autoblog.com. Send us your Spend My Monies. 5 stars on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you get the show. Please get into the comments. Let us know what you think about cars from 1995, Cybertruck, anything else. Be safe out there. We'll see you next week. Thanks for listening.